You just got home. The door closes behind you, and your entire body exhales like it was holding its breath for hours. Nobody hurt you. Nobody was mean to you. You were just around people, and now you feel like you survived something. If that sounds familiar, you're not broken, you're not depressed, and you're definitely not antisocial. But there is something going on inside your brain that most people will never understand, because people who genuinely prefer being alone carry a specific set of psychological traits that science is only now starting to take seriously, and some of them will make you rethink everything you believed about yourself. Here's the lie you've been told your entire life: that being social equals being healthy. That the person with the biggest friend group wins. That if you'd rather stay home on a Saturday, there's something you need to fix. Schools reward the loud kids. Workplaces promote the networkers. Even dating apps penalize you for not being available 24/7. And at some point you started believing that maybe they're right. Maybe something really is wrong with you. Psychology says the exact opposite, and it's not even close. So before we get into the traits, I need you to forget everything society taught you about what normal is supposed to look like. Trait 1. Your brain doesn't fear silence. In 2014, psychologist Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia ran an experiment that sounds almost like a joke. He put people in an empty room for 15 minutes. No phone, no book, nothing. Just them and their thoughts. The only other option was a button that would give them a mild electric shock. 2/3 of the men and 1/4 of the women shocked themselves voluntarily. Physical pain was literally more tolerable than 15 minutes alone with their own brain. Now think about you. You sit in silence, and your brain doesn't scream for an exit. It settles in. It wanders into places most people never visit. Old memories, unsolved questions, ideas that only surface when the noise stops. Psychologists call this elevated internal awareness. Your brain defaults to self-reflection instead of reaching for external stimulation. You don't need input to feel okay, and that one trait alone separates you from most adults who have never once sat with their own thoughts without panicking. But that's the easy one. The next trait is where it starts to get personal. Trait 2. You don't have less social energy. You spend it differently. People assume you're drained because you're bad at socializing. That's completely wrong. You're drained because you're doing it at twice the intensity of everyone around you. When you talk to someone, you actually listen. You track their micro-expressions. You process what they're really saying underneath the words they chose. That takes enormous mental bandwidth. The person next to you at that party is skimming conversations like push notifications. You're reading every single one like a novel. Neuroscientist Hans Eysenck studied this decades ago. People who prefer solitude already operate at a higher baseline of internal stimulation. Social input doesn't energize them. It overloads them. Think of it like Wi-Fi bandwidth. You're not getting a weaker signal. You're running 10 times more tabs than everyone else. Of course, your system heats up faster. So your small circle isn't a limitation. It's resource management, and that connects directly to something even more revealing. Trait 3. You feel rooms before you process them. Tell me if this sounds right. You walk into a room, and before anyone says a word, you already know who's angry, who's faking their smile, which 2 people just had a fight. You absorb all of it instantly without trying. That's called emotional perceptiveness. Psychologist Elena Aaron found that roughly 15 to 20% of the population carries this trait at a heightened level. Your nervous system is tuned to a frequency that picks up emotional signals other people don't even register. You walk into a room, and it's like everyone is broadcasting on a channel only you can hear. Sounds like a superpower, right? It's not. Not without an off switch. Because when you feel everything at full volume all day, the only way to hear yourself again is to leave. Solitude isn't your escape. It's your way of returning to your own signal after being flooded by everyone else's. What most people spend years in therapy learning, that emotional boundary between you and the chaos around you. Your brain built that on its own when you were a kid. But here's something people with this trait almost never realize. Trait 4. Your mind creates differently than others. You know that thing where you're in the shower and suddenly an idea connects to another idea and then to a third one, and you've built something in your head that feels genuinely new? That doesn't happen to everyone. Not like that. Researcher Gregory Feist at San Jose State analyzed decades of data on creative personalities and found one trait that showed up across every field. It wasn't talent. It wasn't IQ. It was a preference for working alone. Their brains needed the absence of external noise to make the unexpected connections that produce original ideas. Nikola Tesla refused to work in groups and said his best ideas came during long solitary walks. Kafka wrote almost exclusively late at night when everyone else was asleep. These weren't quirky habits, that was the engine. So every hour you spend alone isn't wasted time. It's your mind doing the exact work it was built for. And the people who tell you to get out more will never understand what they're actually taking from you. But now we need to stop for a second, because there's something important we have to address. The uncomfortable question. Everything I just described is true, but only if you're being honest about why you prefer solitude, because there's a version of this that isn't healthy. Do you choose to be alone because it recharges you? Because your mind works better in silence? Or do you choose it because connection feels dangerous? Because being alone means nobody can reject you. One is a preference, the other is a shield, and they look identical from the outside. If your solitude feels like freedom, keep reading. If it feels more like hiding, that might be worth a conversation with someone you trust, because the last trait only works if the foundation is solid. Trait 5. You don't collect people. You curate them. You've been at a dinner table where everyone is talking, and somehow nobody is saying anything, and you can physically feel yourself checking out. Not because you're rude, because your brain ran a cost calculation in real time and decided this isn't worth the energy. Your brain treats shallow interaction the way your stomach treats gas station sushi. Technically, it's food, but your system knows the difference, and after enough empty exchanges, it refuses to keep pretending. That's why your circle is small. That's why you'd rather have one real conversation than 20 polite ones. And the people who made it through your filter, they know they're there because you chose them, not because you needed them. Now zoom out. A brain that doesn't fear silence. An emotional radar that reads entire rooms. A creative engine that only fires when the world goes quiet. An energy system that refuses to waste itself. And a filter that only lets in what's real. That's not a collection of quirks. It's an entirely different way of being human. And the tragedy is that most people who carry all of this spend years believing they're the problem. Too sensitive, too picky, too quiet. Because nobody ever told them that the way they're wired isn't a defect. It's the whole design. The world will keep rewarding the loudest person in the room. People will keep asking you why you're so quiet, as if quiet is a problem that needs an answer. But somewhere underneath all of that noise, you already know something they don't. You know what your own mind sounds like when nobody else is.